Treasury bond is the problem. And they're focusing and creating a rally into the problem area. What they're really doing, an analogy, is saying, we've got an entire building on fire. And your neighborhood is in trouble with robberies and, car accidents, and streetlights don't work. So we want you all to come into the burning building. We're going straight for 1900. The time that it took to go to 1400 to 1500 was what? Month and a half? The time between 1500 and 1600, I think it's going to be about 3 weeks. This could happen before September's over. And they might push it down some, but it's getting pushed back up in recovery steps very quickly. We got the dollar really in a Wiley Coyote moment. I love that phrase, the coyote and what was it, the rooster? No,
the roadrunner.
The roadrunner. He looks like a rooster, but he's got longer legs. I watched a lot of cartoons when I was a kid. I watched the Three Stooges. I watched Our Gang, with Alfalfa and Darla. But Wile E. Coyote, he would often just run. All of a sudden, I'm over a chasm. That's where the dollar is right now. It's got a monetary policy factor where we're going to not just reduce rates towards zero. We're going right back down to zero. We cannot stop. Just take a look at the bond yields. My gosh, we got way under 2% on the 10-year Treasury. This is during enormous supply. That was my forecast. Not going to make any sense. We really deserve a 10 or 15% bond yield, but we don't have regular markets. We have rig markets and financial engineering machinery running behind the scenes. So here's kind of a concept that's important. As the US government debt rises and rises, I'm talking about the annual deficit, what has to be financed, not the overall debt, the US government debt at 22 trillion. When we add on another $1.5 trillion or $1.3 trillion, we need to make that as cheap as possible. So we need to engineer bond rallies to bring that down to 1.5%, so we don't have an extraordinarily large cost to finance and manage the debt borrowing costs. Okay, that is your guarantee of low US Treasury bond. I used to have an error, pardon me, in my forecasts. I got a few wrong ones, not many. My first big error was, I think it was 2010, right around there. I said, we're going to see a big rise in the Treasury bond yield. And it didn't happen because of financial engineering, and Rob Kirby helped me out to learn about how they keep the bond yields down, even though conditions on a fundamental level are horrible. I made another error. This is my cyclical error in forecast. If I remove the errors that I make for forecasting US Treasury bonds, I'm not sure I have any errors. They're the majority. There might be one or two. I can't remember. I think it was about 1.5 years ago. I said, we're moving up to 3% and maybe 3.5%. And Rob Kirby very kindly said, Jim, be careful. Don't overlook the debt, the financial engineering machinery, the interest rate swaps. He said, and don't also overlook the fact that they could engineer a stock decline in order to move money, start the cattle, the sheep, from moving straight from the stockyard straight to the bond yard. I said, okay, probably got this wrong, Rob. Sure, and he was right. He's been right on all the bond calls, and I've been wrong on several. But I learned slowly on the bond market, but I got a lot of the other ones right. Thankfully, with a lot of help from my colleagues. So the monetary policy factor is going to cause a Wile E. Coyote moment where the dollar is going to come down. The perception will be, oh my gosh, the Fed's now catching up. In other words, they're cutting rates faster than the rest of the community of central banks. And When they catch up, it means they're getting aggressive and big rate cuts and big bond purchases announced, and the dollar is going to fall relative to, say, the British pound and the euro. And the gold price in dollar terms will rise faster than in those other currencies. When it becomes more clear what the deficit is, when it's really not just, 1 point, they're actually putting out, commentary that the deficit this year might be as little as 850 billion, 900 billion, 920 billion, and it might increase a trillion, but we don't think so. No, it's going to be like $1.5 trillion. If you subtract the debt from this year into the debt from last year. The napkin approach that a third grader can do. You don't need a PhD in accounting to falsify everything. You can do it at a third grade math level. It's not even math, it's arithmetic. Okay, when it becomes known that the deficit is huge, again, over, again, and next year could be worse, the dollar is going to come down relative to the other major currencies. Just think of the major currencies as being the IMF basket of the yen, the yuan, Chinese, the British, and the euro. And the dollar closes out the group of five. If you have a bank failure, and look at the oil price. I mean, we've been saying this for 2 years. The shale sector is very vulnerable under $70, $75. And they said, no, now 70, now it's now 65. Well, we're under all that. We've been under that for years, 2 years. Okay, if you have a major Wall Street bank failure that cites their, I just heard that there's $100 billion in energy debt, energy sector debt. And I'm not sure, but I think a good 10 billion of it is the shale sector. And it's all lousy impaired. If you have one bank failure or an extreme situation where they need a bailout from the Fed or the US government, and the government likes to support the energy sector because oil used to be the petrodollar foundation for the dollar's entire structure. So there's like this old loyalty, old school, old structural relationships, and we keep this going. For instance, why do we keep lending money to the shale sector that operates at a loss for over 2 years? Because we want dollar-based oil revenue from trade, because the Saudis are not 100% dollar-based anymore. And a lot of nations, like Europe, is about to go euro-based with Russian oil trade. Russians aren't going to trade in dollar anymore for oil. So if you have a big failure in Wall Street or an event that requires an enormous patch, look for an effect on the dollar relative to the other major IMF currencies. Here's a Lulu, emerging market debt. It's like, oh my gosh, it's hard to put a number on this. It's like 100 to 300 times larger than the shale sector. Okay, if you got the shale sector at maybe 10 billion, you've got the emerging market at maybe 10 trillion. It's, I don't like to say it's 1,000 times bigger. I like to say it's several hundred times bigger at least. And it's all at risk because the dollar keeps going up and their little emerging market nation currencies go down. Now, we used to sell them this emerging market debt saying, hey, what's the risk? It's like, 2%. And the smart ones were saying, the risk is at the currency level. If you don't get a big rise in the interest rate, but you get a 20% fall in your currency, it acts like a 20% raise in your interest rate. And for the last 2 years, gosh, we heard estimates 2 years that it was 8 trillion in emerging market debt, EM debt. It's bigger now. I think it's like 10 to 12 trillion. And it's just getting worse. 2 years ago, Wall Street banks had a tough call. And this is called Western banks. Deutsche Bank, London Center, Wall Street, big American banks, big Western banks. They had a tough call. Do we force the default of the emerging market debt, or do we lend them more just to keep it floating? It's called lending toward debt service. It's lending good money after bad when it's already impaired. It's guaranteed to default, but we're going to delay the default for another year by lending them more and making the impact greater in a year. Wow, that's not progress, but that's the Western way. That's the Anglo-American way, because they stay in power and they can steal trillions during that year. And it's worth it to them Not worth it to the rest of us. Okay, so you've got monetary policy, U.S. government deficit factor, Wall Street bank failure factor, emerging market. This is all adding up to the king dollar at a Wile E. Coyote moment. The dollar's going to fall. I had for the longest time been saying the dollar's going to rise, then rise some more before it vanishes. I've adapted that for over a year now. I'm allowed to correct my forecasts. I'm allowed to adapt my analysis. I'm now saying, and I have been saying for months, the dollar's going to rise, then rise some more, cause terrific problems, rise some more, force a dual universe where the Asians and the East rely on the Chinese currency and the Russian currency, and continue to rise and force tremendous problems in the frontier zone like Germany and Iran, where they're going to try to have 1 foot in the dollar pond and 1 foot in the RMB pond. And a friend of mine said recently during this conversation, this similar topic of conversation, he said, Jim, I don't think they're going to be allowed to have both feet in the 2 ponds, the 2 feet in 2 ponds for long. I said, no, because the dollar has coercion to remain, whereas the RMB has encouragement to join. And those are completely different dynamics that lead to the growth of the Eurasian trade zone. And now the Eurasian trade zone is about to capture Europe, because if Putin gets his way and the Germans succeed in getting away from the dollar and toward a euro-based oil trade, with Putin inviting in Turkey and India and other, like the entire eastern section of Europe, then we're going to get a rapid growth of the non-dollar trade. I don't care whether it's the euro or the RMB, it's non-dollar. And that's the key. The Eurasian trade zone is working its way right now toward the non-dollar standard. It might be ruble for some. Like if the Russians are dealing with Kazakhstan or Uzbekistan, various trade in return for oil shipments, it's all ruble. Not dollar anymore. We've told them don't use our dollar. We're going to block you out. So they say, okay, we'll make it exclusively non-dollar and grow the entire Asian continent. Our policies don't work. The Eurasian trade zone is going to capture Europe. By definition, Europe, Asia. It's been called the Eurasian Economic Union. I call it Eurasian Trade Zone, ETZ. I've been calling that before they came up with their name. I was on this 5 years ago. The Eurasian trade zone is going to be powerful, big, and it's going to knock Orwell's concepts on its ass. Oceania must give way, in the Orwellian definition, to Eurasia. And you're seeing the Eurasian trade zone develop its port network. This is a very big concept. The port network involves Pakistan. The Chinese invested $100 billion in Pakistani ports. Now, obviously, it's not just to build a port and have the moorings and have the container drop-offs and all that. It's to develop the entire distribution centers inland. And they've got like 20,000 army contingency to make sure that no funny stuff happens from the typical Anglo-American sabotage and hired terrorists. Meanwhile, in Iran, they've got their own ports that are being built up. And India is trying to get integrated with all this. India is key. India does not like all the British pressure. India might possibly be the origin of some free energy concepts. And it might get integrated somehow into their economy or banking system or their currency system. It's all very embryonic. Got some hope there. So the dollar, all I can hope for now is hanging on for a couple of years while the dual universe takes form. The frontier zone shifts west and creeps into Europe, and eventually, what's the frontier? I don't know. Is it going to be like Sweden and Norway? They're still somewhat in Luxembourg and Belgium, the old mainstays for the dollar, and the Baltic states. I'm hearing the Baltic states are starting to flip. And gosh, if there's any group of nations that we've controlled like under the thumb, it's been the Baltic states. Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia. They're trying to increase their port facility access to Russian trade. This is new. This is not something that was in the news or even a reality a year ago. Last thing I'd like to cover is these little foreign threats. They're not so little. They're just short stories. I mentioned Hong Kong. The Chinese authorities have let it be known, I've heard through my grapevine, have let it be known that if we continue the pressure on Hong Kong, and right now the airport shut down, they're going to see to it, the Chinese are going to see to it that they shut down the London LBMA gold market. So you play in our backyard in Hong Kong, you mess up our little independent experiment since '98, and we'll mess with your London gold market. Maybe they already started, Paul. Maybe they're using 16 proxies. The Chinese have had years to develop their game, and they don't do it in a way that's really obvious. I got news. This is, it's an off the point mark while I entered my head. I heard that the Chinese are increasing their buildup, their replacement, their reconstruction of their silver stockpile. They're rebuilding their silver stockpile. And the first question I asked to my contact was, who do you think is helping them? And they think it's JP Morgan, the hidden hand of a Wall Street bank. And I said, well, that fits because, what was it, 3 years ago? A Chinese property conglomerate took over the JP Morgan headquarters and the entire property with a tremendously cheap price, which indicated to me that they were really just covering a debt collateral seizure. Okay. So the Chinese are saying hands off in Hong Kong, and we're not. So the Chinese are saying, okay, I'm just making this up, the conversation that would be behind the walls. The Chinese say, okay, and we're going to attack with medium force the London gold market. And we're up suddenly toward 1,500. I think it got to 1,485 or something like that. I don't follow it every single day. I follow the factors that push it to well beyond 2,000. I got to mention this. I got a French analyst, an independent fellow. Cyril, you know who you are. He just passed out a report. It's going to be published. Can't remember the site, Gold something. I think Gold Star. Anyway, it's about how silver is going to break out, and because it's such a smaller market, in my opinion, it's going to follow some Fibonacci sequences. We had a quick move from, say, 13, 30, 50. Those are rough Fibonacci numbers. I think we're going to go 30, 50, 80, 120, 130, 30, 50, 80, 130. These are rough Fibonacci numbers. And, if you're of the mathematical persuasion and you want to get a mathematical equation of the sequence of Fibonacci numbers, I've got it. It involves the old Greek golden ratio of 1 plus and minus the root of 5 over 2. If you want to know, Jim, I'd like to know, this is kind of a silly exercise, but what is the 610th Fibonacci number? I'll say, well, what are the first two? 0 and 1? Yeah, okay. 0, 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8. Okay, that's how it works. I want to know the 610th. Okay, here's your formula. But it's just a formula. I mean, do you really want to work with 1 plus the square root of 5 over 2 to the 610th power? But it's a mathematical solution. It is true. And you could prove that it actually has that sequence. I've got it. And if you want it, ask me. But do so after hitting the donate button. In fact, hit the donate button before and after. Here's another big threat. I'm going to get to my donate topic in a minute because we're running out of time. It's been over an hour and a quarter. Germany has threatened the United States. They're saying, if you want to continue with this obstacle for Nord Stream, an obstacle toward our workarounds of the Russian sanctions, then we're going to hit you where it hurts. We're going to do physical gold buying. So China is saying we're going to hit the London gold market, while Germany is saying we're going to hit the actual buy button for gold. And that could also be a factor that's pushed us up to the $1,500 gold price. There's another factor. It's a little bit smaller, but we're playing a lot of dangerous games. Like blockading Iranian ports and interrupting Iranian ships loaded with oil, or holding them at not, I don't like the word hostage, but holding them at bay, which means you can't go anywhere. We're not going to board you, but we can't move off the Gibraltar coast. And oh my gosh, what stupid games. These don't work. So what's the Iranian response going to be? Well, they might successfully complete oil shipments, get paid, and buy a nice bunch of tonnage of gold. Okay, so you've got the Chinese, Iranians, and Germans playing the gold card. Not going to end well for the dollar. Because if you see the gold price go up, you're going to see pressure for the dollar to go down. If you've got a lot of pressure for the dollar to go down, you're going to have a lot of pressure for the gold to go up. They work in cantilevered negative correlation fashion. This is some of the most exciting times I've observed since the subprime bond era of 05, 06, 07. Really more like 6, 7, and 8. 09 was very exciting. I got to tell you that the biggest hat-trick letter subscription client base growth took place after the Lehman event in September, which I forecasted 3 months and 6 and 9 months in advance. Between September of 08 and the following year was the biggest advance, and I expect that it's going to be something like that in the next 2 years again. I'm kind of jazzed. I had to learn how to say that in Spanish because I tried to talk to a couple of friends. I said, I'm really jazzed. What do you mean, Jimmy? You're excited? Well, more than excited. No, it's estoy emocionado. I'm really psyched. And they said, psycho? No. Psycho means you're crazy. It's kind of a psycho, strange event like lightning in the middle of the day and sunshine. That's a psycho event. I said, and I finally learned, estoy enérgico. I'm energized. That's how they say psyched, jazzed, enérgico. These are exciting times, but this is not 08. The reaction is not going to be the same. We're not going to be able to patch this over. There's not going to be a big bond rally because now the refuge. Oh gosh, I had a nice little quote to a client, but here's the gist of it. I said in 08, the refuge and sanctuary was the Treasury bond because the subprime bond was the cancer. And they moved from Fannie Mae, from the subprimes, from all these collateralized debt obligations, from the leverage squared, all this crazy stuff. It moved into the Treasury bonds. But we contaminated the Treasury bonds by making them subprime and doing all the wrong things with underwriting and derivative dependence. And meanwhile, the whole world is dumping, and we're having Treasury auction failures, and we're having to compensate. Now the problem is the refuge. We need a new safe haven refuge for the bond crisis. They're doing a rally now with bonds, and it's going to be fun to watch. It's going to be very intriguing to watch because the Treasury bond is the problem, and they're focusing and creating a rally into the problem area. What they're really doing, an analogy, is saying, we've got an entire building on fire. And your neighborhood is in trouble with robberies and, car accidents, and streetlights don't work. So we want you all to come into the burning building. And when it's clear that the building is burning, then weird questions come up. Can the US Treasuries have a rally that moved from, say, 1.5 down to 0.7? And after you get there, can we have a rally in the 10-year Treasury bond that goes from 0.7% down to 0.2? And can we really get down and continue the rally into negative bond so that people and investors and fund managers pay the U.S. government to hold their bond holdings? And then you get the incredibly bizarre question, will banks pay you to borrow money to start a business and hire people? This is the bizarre future we're facing. And I say, that's when gold hits 3,000. And I'm not crazy. I'm studying this like a hawk. I'm getting the best information I can. And I invite people to go to the Hat Trick Letter site, golden-jackass.com, sign up for the Hat Trick Letter, and if you're a little squeamish yet to sign up, just hit on all the different sideline interviews, well, as many as you want. Hit on a few and come up to speed on some of these things. These are not in the news. I provide a little compendium Sunday New York Times business section each month, and it's a lot of work. And I enjoy it. And I got to tell you, this year I'm enjoying more and more writing the reports. I'm writing about the actual crisis. I'm writing about where the forecasts are kicking in. I'm going to take my favorite 6 forecasts and write a chapter on each one of them. That's my plan. I'm going to take the 6 most important. It's going to start with the US Fed moving toward infinite QE, forever with the zero bound. But as you enter the website, hop onto the website, check some of the free material. It's both public articles. I had a public article a couple of days ago about how the US dollar is the Achilles heel. And it talks about many of these factors and delineates some, but it was a promotional public article. I want people to sign up for the Hat Trick Letter. I'm running a business, and I admit it, I've had 4 years of some steady cancellations. Jim, I'm sorry I lost my job. I love your newsletter. I say, okay, I'll give you a couple extra months, it's just as a compliment because you've been a client for 4 years. I'm just trying to be a nice guy. But they're coming back. Oh, they're coming back in droves. I just had a call with one of my friends. I said, look at this. I'm just going to read the last 30 new orders. There have been 5 or 6 that have replaced a failed billing because banks are getting in the way. And I got about 14 people who came back from past subscriptions, and they were in it for a couple of years, and they came out, and then now they're back. They're recognizing this crisis. But after you visit the site, let me get to some more details of the jam I'm in. And this is humbling. You see my eyes going down. This is tough. This is very tough. About 6 or 8 months ago, I thought, I'm not going to make it. I've had a few $100,000 in losses. I don't think I'm going to make it. I got debts. I can't cover them. But now we got the bond market crisis. We got gold on the rally, a little bit more in the way of subscription basis, and it's good. And I'm starting to pay down some of the debts. It's very difficult. I had a lot of thoughts a year ago about, very dark about, I don't want to get into full details, but gosh, I'm so tired of this life. It was 2 consecutive years of month after month after month after month after month of $8, $10, $12, $15,000 losses from fraud. I've been hit by attorney fraud a few times. I got hit by Americans swindling. 2 Americans. One was a friend of mine. I lived with him. He swindled me for well over $20,000. Investment didn't exist. He had so many enemies, and word got it that they're out to kill him. Then he left. He's living in Nicaragua. He came back a year and a half ago, 4 months ago, and tapped me on the shoulder. I said, I don't want to talk to you. Mark, I don't want to talk to you. Just get out of my face. You're a swindler. Get out of it. And I walked away. He did not follow me because I'm bigger than he is. And he said, I got my little training, Jim. Well, I don't care what your past training is when you're young. You're not young anymore. And you're kind of fat, you're kind of slow, and I've stayed in shape, and I'm on my bike. There are more events. I mentioned the bad construction. There's other bad construction. Gosh, it was less than a year. I bought a little house, and the roof caved in. And 8 months later, the other part of the roof caved in. And we're talking 20, 25,000 in losses. That's not fraud. And I admit I've made some mistakes. I've trusted some people I shouldn't have trusted. I didn't have a thorough look at a property. I assumed that the roof looked good, but No, it's not very sturdy. There's no steel up there. Um, I wanted to see bigger wood beams, and instead of being big wood beams like that, they're smaller wood beams. And I was told, well, you know, Jim, there's not a lot of weight on the roof. Yeah, it's holding a tin roof, but that doesn't stop it from wind shifting. Okay, there were so many losses, and I got to say this: when I started talking in March and in April of 2017 about the pedophiles, I don't want to provide a lot of details of this. Um, I would say over 90% of the events occurred. And it's pretty hard to say, Jim, that's not related. Well, you can't say, well, you know, demons wrecked the roof or demons induced the fraud with the title on the property. You can't do that. You can't prove anything. What I do is I look in a cold way. I had an event 2014 that was costly. I had another event 2016, not big cost, you know, like 12 grand for a problem. I got it fixed. But starting in March and April of 2017, when I was open about what the pedophiles were doing to kids, 1 month, 15, next month, 18, next month, 27, next month, 32, next month, 18, next. In the space of 3 or 4 days, I had a car crash where a client was killed and an exploded septic tank where shit was everywhere. Cost almost $40,000. Had another car crash, involved a death, a court case. These are all following this theme of mine of exposure of the pedos. I'm not talking about the pedos anymore, the pedophile, the killers. I'm not talking about their child trafficking. I'm not talking about their kills, their sacrifice. I'm not talking about any of it anymore. That's as much as I'll say. But I'm dealing with a tremendous loss. And I've saved the worst for last. There was let's just say, a business that had a lot of shipments to Panama. And there were legitimate types of shipments. I don't want to mention the type of company it was. I like to keep that kind of private and personal. But I was involved with 5% ownership. And there were two fellows involved with the owner. And he had 20% owner, 22% owner, and himself. And the rest was divided among several other people, like 3%, 7%, 4%, 5%. We were in for 5%. It became a crime scene. They were using their, how should I say, transport routes for other purposes. And I don't want to mention any more than that. You kind of figure it out. But they got arrested. And that was March of 17. And for the next 16 months, I had enormous costs every single month. Warehouse costs, transport costs, attorney costs, court fine cost, a cost for covering a loan that was improperly set up with business collateral. It was a crime scene. The guy and his partner went to prison. And they encountered their own difficulties in prison because it's, you know, hardly like, you know, Leavenworth here. I'm asking people to hit the donate button to help me to reach my goal of well over a 6-figure recovery. And we got a nice little start here. But hit the donate button, hit the why donate, see my little paragraph. If you got other questions, write me an email. I've gotten 3 or 4 questions about, could you tell me a little bit more about the nature of the crime scene? I give them a little more information. I don't give them complete. But I'm also looking for some wealthy benefactors to you know, donate a little bit more than a small, medium amount. And that so far has got some prospects and hope. And I'm very happy about what's happened. And I should say there are no tax consequences because they're small donations typically. Anything that's, you know, under a couple $1,000, under $1,500, under $900, it's considered small and has no tax consequences. And on the receiving end, it's no tax consequences. It's like being a recipient from Red Cross. Wow, that's turning the tables. I like that. So I'm very excited about the beginning of this donate button. And I'm hopeful that it continues. And I'm very thankful to the people who've already contributed and helped me out. a lot of very nice messages like hang in there, Jim. Don't let the evil boys get you down. You got a lot of followers who love you. Your client base, I mean your follower base, your observer base, your followers are much, much larger than you know. Here in Europe, I have a few contacts and we're not subscribers, and we know people who follow your work, and it's all very encouraging, Paul, and I'm hopeful that I'm going to dig my way out of this. It's not going to be done in 2 months. It's not going to be done in 6 months. I'm going to run this for a while, have a few rounds and see what happens. And I know there's a risk. I was told by a colleague or two, Jim, you got a risk to your brand. And I said, yeah, but I'm going to handle it in a honest and humble manner. And I think I might get brownie points for it. And I've gotten a lot. I've had only one message that I would classify as being very spurious, suspicious, and you're trying to run a game here. Only one, and I've had 80 that are positive. So it's a good ratio, 50, 60, 80 that are positive. And I only have that one that's even remotely negative. There are a lot that just donate and say, good luck, now, best wishes, hang in there. My prayers are with you. And I like to say there are two groups. It's the followers who are just, strictly secular type finance economics, and another that are Christian and might see the demonic element to what has happened to me. And I can tell you, I don't want my voice to break, this has really affected me. And I've lost some financial security from years and years, like a pension. This has affected loved ones. This is now affecting a relationship of mine with a friend. I break down occasionally, and I lose control occasionally. And I appear, very logical and rational and well-spoken or whatever on interviews, and I get a little nutty, fine. There are times when I lose it, and I need help. So I'm asking people to hit the donate button and help me out of the jam. I will be continuing, I've started, to pay down some of the debts that are very difficult, including my own brother. I speak disparagingly about my brother and say that he loves the New York Times and thinks Obama was one of the best presidents we've ever had. Why is that, John? Have you ever looked at his policies? Have you looked at the Iran nuclear deal and all the narcotics payoffs? Oh, I don't believe all that. He helped me out when I was at a very difficult time. And I was at risk of losing an additional property that was collateralized. We were running out of time, and he offered a nice big loan, paid off the debt, got the title. This is a nasty environment. It's full of fraud. They've got a saying here, pura vida, pure life. It comes from the extension of we have no military, we have no wars. But you have a lot of internal fraud. So I turn it around. Instead of saying pure life, pura vida, I say rot the life, pudre vida, pudre la vida. It means they use that as the F word, pudrete. That's F-U. And it strictly means go rot yourself. But, it means a whole lot more. I think their national sport is fraud. They're a good football team, good soccer team. In the 2014 World Cup, did well. We beat Italy 1-0. I have photos. I mean, like 5,000 people hitting a big rotary area with numerous boulevards. They shut it down. It was enormous. They were singing. They had barbecues on the side. They had music. They had everything. And I was out there enjoying it a little bit. Of course, I was checking out some babes, whatever. But I got to the third floor balcony of the mall, and I took photos, and it was an emotional moment. It was a point of Costa Rican pride, all before this disgusting sequence of fraud and losses and poor construction and car crashes. And anyway, I'm going to get through this. I'm going to be damaged. And with a lot of help, I'm going to be less damaged. That's how I look at it. And that's my pitch, Paul. I said a little more than I wanted, but what really hurt me was the crime scene.
Well, thank you for sharing that with us, Jim. You have been through a lot in the last couple of years, and gold's on the move here. The dollar just went over the cliff in the wily coyote moment. So, we need you on top of your game to navigate us through this. So, yes, if you have the means and are willing and able to hit that donation button, smash that donate button and send a few of those fiat dollars Jim Willie's way. What can you leave us with today, Jim, as we wind down?
If you're a gold investor, don't be content with 15 or 1600. It's going a lot higher. I've never seen so many factors that are explosive, and any two of them would take us past 1600. We've got 5 or 6 or 7 very big, powerful global factors. We did all the wrong things since 2008. And on the silver front, don't be content with 25, 30, 35. We're going a lot higher. And I think the gains in silver, this is an important point. The gains in silver eventually, I mean like the percentage gain, gold might go up, say, let's say 8-fold, and I think silver is going to go up 20-fold. But the other important phenomenon about silver is the silver move might be a little bit later. But look right now, 17 for silver is not bad, but I think it's a little more impressive for gold. But watch silver come along for the ride and get some momentum. And a very important point is, look at all the shorts that are sitting above 1400 in gold that are getting covered. Look at all the shorts that are sitting above 15 in silver that are getting covered. This is how you get kind of an artificial jet assist, I call it, for the upward movement. It's a lot more than people buying the physical. It's covering their short contracts. So it's like double the impact on the price with less impact on actual bar and bar movement, coin movement. This is not going to be moved by the coin level. This is not going to happen at the coin level. So get as many coins as you can. You're going to encounter some dealers that are out. And some of them are complaining. I'm getting some very interesting stories. Dealers are saying, I did a lot better when the price was lower because I had people who could actually sell to me and I'd have more inventory. But now with the price going up and people realize it's going to go a lot higher, they're not selling to me and I'm out of inventory. Whoa! If that's not an indication that we're going a lot higher, I don't know what is. I'm putting the note down because I want to make that an item. I don't have a photographic memory, but I got a very good memory. And I don't want to lose that thought. That is a big bull indicator. These dealers are not going to be principal parties. No, it's going to be other guys. I don't want to mention names. I know a fellow who's a friend of our colleagues, and he's involved in billion-dollar gold and silver deals. He's involved in $400, $600, $800 million deals. And I've asked questions and they're passed along and I get an answer. Who are your clients? And it comes back to me, it's not instant. It takes sometimes a week or two. The guy's busy. And it's, well, some are Arab sheiks. Some are Chinese and Hong Kong billionaires. Some are Western Europe billionaires who have multiple homes and, they've got an office in Dubai or an office in Hong Kong or an office in, other locations. Cairo, business connect. There's a lot going on in North Africa. Whoa, there's an entire big multi-year project to have light industry from Libya all the way to Egypt. Light industry and moving in Ethiopian natural gas and Sudanese pipelines. This is going to service Europe, and this is going to have some Chinese backing. Okay, so he's got wind of various things like that, and he doesn't like to tell me a lot about his clients. He said, no, my business, my Rolodex is my business. I'll give you, rough cuts. But let me just say that there are a lot of billionaires around who are kind of multinational. They got 2 or 3 passports. They're the ones who are going to push this up. They're the ones who've been saying, we're not going to buy, senor, we're not going to buy $800 million worth of gold bars until we see this price over 1,500. Because we're not going to sit down when we're at 1250, 1280, 1350, and just twiddling our thumbs for 2 more years. We need to see a breakout. And when we see this 1,500 and 1,600, we're going to be the guys who move it to 1,800 and 1,900 with close to $1 billion in purchases of gold bars that take more than one plane worth of, I don't want to mention it, just, secure transport shipments that are totally insured. $800 million. How many coin dealers would you need to line up to get that kind of volume? I would think a coin dealer might have, I don't know exactly, $20,000, $40,000, $50,000 a month. Well, if it's 50,000, you need 20 of them to get to $1 million. And you need 1,000 of them to get to $1 billion. So you need 20,000 of them to get to $1 billion purchase. 20,000 gold dealers. I mean, these are big, big numbers that the big players are playing. They're the ones, and you better get along for the ride. I got a client in New Mexico, and he said, Jim, I just want to see like a $1,800, $2,000 price, and I'll sell a bunch because, damn, I sold below my cost for some. I just want to make back some, and I'm, getting on in years, and I sure would like to see what you're talking about, getting up to 3, 4, 5,000 for gold. I'll be having some parties with my old-time buddies. I think it's going to happen, Charlie. That's his name. He's a good guy. One of my clients. He's been around for several years. And he's waiting and waiting and waiting. And I told him, I think your wait is over. Now it's time to enjoy, but don't sell early. This is going much higher. You think you're going to be around kicking among us in 2 years? He said, well, I think so. And I said, then don't be content at 1,800. He said, well, that's pretty hard not to do, Jim. Okay, well, fine. I thank you for having me on, Paul. $50. I need another nickname. I'm just the Golden Jackass. And for people who are still wondering, well, what's this jackass thing? When I was a little boy, pardon me, I got a lot of buildup. When I was a little boy, my mother used to call me my little jackass. Because, I was small. When I was young, I was small. I grew fast, but I had the blonde hair and blue eyes. And my little jackass, what are you doing? And I'd tap her on the right shoulder, and I'd steal cookie dough on the left shoulder over the left, and I'd run. She couldn't catch me. I was a fast little bugger. But I was the little jackass. And then when I was a teenager, I was just the jackass. What are you doing, you jackass? I was doing something stupid, like, tearing apart her flower garden so I could take some flowers to a girl, or, just something stupid. You little jackass. So when I became a newsletter site, I thought Golden Jackass, because I was going to follow Golden. I'm a jackass, and I kick a lot of sand in their faces, and they might have hurt me. It's funny. The voice said, Jim, I don't buy that. And I said, well, you're a logical guy. I don't buy your demonic argument. You made some bad decisions. I said, yes, I did. This is way past 3 standard errors of the normal Costa Rican fraud and business loss. I just had news yesterday of another loss from cleaning up something that I thought was done and closed several months ago. I'm not going to mention amounts. It's the government. They levied a fee, not a fine, a fee, because they thought something was incomplete. Okay, now it's complete. I'm going to lose more money, you bastards. This is nasty, nasty environment here. I should never have done any investments on the side, but I did. I don't want to get into all the reasons why, but I did, and some were with other people, little partnerships, and hardly anything worked. It's sad, but there are 1 or 2 that still work. And now, okay, just a simple question. If you got something working, Jim, and it's actually profitable on the side, what kind of problem do you encounter, even though it's a success? Late payments. I'll pay you in 14 days. No, it's more like 6 weeks, but it's not a loss. It just ties up some funds. Okay, I said more than I really should, but I really appreciate your having me on. And I apologize for my movement. When I watch myself, I go, wow, you look like Michael J. Fox. I do a little bit, but I can't sit still. I'm a very animated person. It gets me in trouble with certain types of friends who are much more mild-mannered. Jim, what's your problem? Can't you relax? No, I can't very well. I fidget a lot. I work for 30, 40, 50 minutes, maybe a little more, and I go for a walk. I go to the window. I go look out. I go grab some juice. I'm a fidgety guy. I'm intense. It's my nature. I work hard, and I look for people to help me out during this extremely difficult situation that I found myself in. I'm going to get through it. I keep saying it. It's just a matter of how much the damage is. And appreciate having me on.
Jim Willie, golden-jackass.com. I'd like to get an update from you when gold passes 1600, and I have a feeling that it's going to be sooner than later. Thank you for joining us again on Silver Doctors.
My pleasure.